Welcome to the channel. My name is Max Villman. I'm a former fighter pilot in the Swedish Air Force, and today we are analyzing the effects and the conclusions of the Ukrainian so-called summer offensive. What happened and what will happen going forward. And as always, let's go. So the first thing that happened before the summer offensive started was that Ukraine got a lot of Western equipment from Western and Eastern nations alike. I think you all know that before the war, Ukrainian armed forces were mainly armed through old Soviet tanks and all kinds of weapon systems. And of course, it has become very, very difficult for Ukraine to get extra parts, spare parts, and of course they cannot buy new tanks, T-72 tanks, because they're built in Russia. So eventually what will happen is that Ukraine will go from a Soviet type armed forces to a more Western type armed forces with Western equipment. But right now there's still a majority of Soviet equipment, including T-72 tanks, for example, and MiG-29 fighter jets. And what has happened is that a lot of other former Eastern European nations have given them their tanks. Poland has given, I think, more than 300 tanks. So in total, Ukraine had gotten before the summer 575 tanks, and 325 of those are from Poland, with the majority, of course, being T-72 tanks, so old Soviet tanks. And also other stuff like we talked about, like fighter planes. But the Western nations have started giving them their own main battle tanks. Sweden has sent 10 Leopard 2s, and other nations have sent different kinds as well. Leopard 1s, 2s, Challengers from the UK, and also I think we saw the first picture of an Abrams tank being in Ukraine just a couple of days ago. So the US will send approximately 1 battalion. So this doesn't look like much, and it isn't that much, but it's much better than nothing, of course. And these the crews, you don't just need the equipment, you need the crews as well and the training. So what's happened is that they were training in European nations on different kinds of equipment, Ukrainian soldiers, that is. In Sweden, for example, we also sent CV-90s, combat vehicle 90s, and from the other nations there were Bradleys being sent and other infantry fight vehicles, of course. And all in all, those brigades, a brigade is roughly 3,000 to 5,000 men, they were trained in during the spring and arrived in the early summer, but the offensive could not start before in the middle of summer. And when the offensive started, what we saw was first a try from Ukrainian armed forces to attack with the large mechanized columns towards the Russian prepared lines. This did not work at all. We saw attack helicopters, we saw anti-tank missiles, we saw mines destroying a lot of Western equipment, Ukrainian Western equipment. And since then, Ukraine has instead switched to offensive using infantry fight vehicles to drive the assault squads, the assault troops forward to just near the front line, unload, and then from there assault on foot. And this is to counter the big mines and all the other field work that the Russians have done, because there has been a lot of mining, a lot of field work, a lot of trenches being built, etc., several kilometers deep in many places. So it's a heavily fortified line that the Ukrainians are trying to break through. And what have they achieved so far? So if you take a look at the map, basically the red map is how it looked before the summer. And right now we see the small blue and the small orange colored things near the front line, and that is Russian, or Russian is the orange and Ukrainian is the blue. So as you have seen, as you see in this map, there's a small spot on the entire map. So not much has been reached. The Ukrainian goals were probably, most likely, to reach Tokmak and eventually to Melitopol or Berdyansk, and this is to cut off this part here, Kherson and Crimea, from mainland Russia. Right now they can drive by train and by car supplies all the way down. If they would to cut off here, or at least get close to cutting off to the drive to the Azov Sea, the Sea of Azov, then the Russians would have to rely on transport by boat and by the Kerch Bridge to get their troops and the civilian population there supplied. So this is probably what Ukraine want to do, split it in half, and then make the situation around Crimea and the south of Kherson, Melitopol unbearable, and then in turn continue the offensive there. But as you see here on the map, this map is from the Institute Study of War, not much has been achieved, and if you zoom in, we see that it's not much that has been achieved, and there are massive Russian defensive lines prepared, still a couple of kilometers deep. So Ukraine did not get to achieve their objectives there. They also attack a little bit around Bakhmut, I think mainly to draw in Russian forces there, to bind them there. And what has developed in the last couple of weeks is that Russia has actually gone on the offensive again and started to attack around the town of Avdiivka. Avdiivka is a very heavily fortified town on the Ukrainian side, because this is where the front line went exactly when the war basically ended or got frozen between 2014 to 2022. So all this time, the Ukrainian side has fortified this area. What we can see here is that the main lines seem to be holding around Avdiivka, but Russia is making progress around. And of course, eventually, the logistical situation in Avdiivka, you need to bring in ammunition, supplies, you need to bring out the wounded, bring in reinforcements and so on. Eventually, if the Russians manage to come even further around here to outflank Avdiivka, then the situation in the town itself, which is basically a fortress right now, is unbearable, of course. So it can be a more, a better strategy to attack around the edges here, the flanks. And I think that is what Russia is trying to do. Oh, excuse me. Furthermore, not much has happened. There's been fighting all along the front line basically, but not much territory has switched hands. We will see how long Russia can keep off their offensive capabilities. I think it's fair to say that the Ukrainian offensive has culminated, and Russia has managed to bring in some reserves to attack around Avdiivka, but they have gotten many losses, a lot of mechanized fighting vehicles and tanks being destroyed. So we will see how long they can keep it up. They have not mobilized again, which is quite strange. Perhaps they are waiting for Putin's re-election in the Russian election, the presidential election, so Putin's re-election in March of 2024. That could be the case. What is most important for the Russian regime is, of course, to keep the regime in power. And if you disturb too much and make the war too much known for the population in Russia, that could prove a problem. So mainly they want to keep their to keep the regime's power going. So right now, I think it's fair to say that the Ukrainian offensive has culminated, which means that they probably need to get more reserves from Western equipment, need more supplies. And what is clear, I think, is that if Ukraine does not get more help from the West, then they will not manage to take back the territory, which is, of course, what they want to do. And if we want this war to stop, we should send everything we have, because as soon as we start talking about peace, which you have started hearing whispers about now, the only thing that you do is that you give the Russians initiative. You will just fuel their fire, their will to fight. As soon as they hear that the West is about to crack, they will increase their effort, because they know that the end for them is quite, the good end for them is quite near. So if you want to make sure that this war does not go on for long, we should send everything we have to Ukraine to make sure that they defeat the Russians on the battlefield. But I will end it here. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a like and subscribe. That helps with the algorithm and doesn't cost you anything. I'm talking a lot about self-help and self-leadership experiences from my Air Force career in my ebooks. There's a free ebook if you go to payhip.com /Max Villman, payhip.com /Max Villman, the link in the description as well. You can grab a free book, 5 mistakes fighter pilots don't make in life that normal people do. If I might say so, I think it's very good lessons in there from my career as a fighter pilot that can be applied to everyone who wants to live the best life possible. So check that out if you want to support the channel. And until next time, fly safe.